Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a drama thriller film called Midsummer from 2019. Enjoy your viewing. Student Danny received a disturbing message from her sister and called her parents to make sure everything was okay, but they did not pick up the phone. Her sister also did not respond to the messages. Christian, Danny's boyfriend, thinks she's worried for nothing. Christian's friends strongly advise him to finally break up with the girl who is constantly making him nervous. Danny called again, but instead of words, Christian heard sobs. It became clear from her voice that the girl no longer had a family. Her sister had poisoned everyone with carbon monoxide. Danny fell into depression, and she had only Christian left. The boyfriend decided to take her to a party. There she learned that Christian and his friends were going to go to Sweden to a village. It had been planned for a long time, even the tickets had been bought. But Danny had only just found out. She was afraid to make a scandal and push Christian away, because then she would be all alone. Christian decided to take Danny with him. The idea of the trip belonged to the Swede Pelle. He grew up in a community where they celebrate the solstice every summer and winter. In the photo, he was holding last year's Queen of May. Pelle was excited that Danny would come with them and see the celebration with his own eyes. Mark was excited about the opportunity to see Swedish girls, and Josh was traveling with a scholarly interest. He was writing his dissertation on local rituals. The company stopped in the middle of a field where young people who had left the village but returned for the solstice holiday were resting. Pelle introduced his friends to his friend Ingemar, who had also brought along a couple he knew, Simon and Connie. Mark was worried. It was 9 p.m., but it was as light as day. Danny ran off into the woods and fell asleep there. The next day, the group went to the village. Their path ran through a dense forest. It was unclear whether the students could have made it back on their own if they had wanted to. Finally, they found themselves in a huge clearing where an unusual village was located. It seemed that they had entered another world. All the inhabitants were dressed in white, and their faces were always smiling. Pelle introduced his friends to his sister, and the village elder explained that white clothing symbolizes respect for Mother Nature and her hermaphroditic nature. The locals were happy to see the guests. The next day, the ceremony was to begin. A crowd gathered on the platform. An elder named Siv announced that there had not been such a crowded celebration of the solstice for 100 years. The 9-day celebration began. An old man was handed a torch and invited the spirits to return to the world of the dead. A red-haired Maya girl came out of the house and looked at the newcomers. Ingmar told his friends that the locals were playing a game. The red-haired girl pushed Christian and winked at him. The boy immediately joined the dance. He had forgotten that it was Danny's birthday, even though they had been together for 4 years. But Pelle remembered and gave Danny her portrait. On the lawn, the teacher was teaching a lesson on carving runes. Nearby was a triangular structure, a sanctuary where no one was allowed to enter. There was also a cage with a bear on the lawn. Pelle took the guests to a huge painted barrack where everyone under the age of 36 slept. After this age, all the locals return from pilgrimage and stay here forever. They become workers. At 54, they become mentors. And after 72, no one lives here anymore. The students took this story as a joke. Pelle reminded Christian of Danny's birthday and slipped him a gift to congratulate the girl. In the barracks, babies were sleeping with everyone else, and runes were placed under their pillows. The next day, there was to be a ceremony. Christian wanted to find information about it on the internet, but there was no connection. The day began with new incomprehensible rituals. Tables were arranged in a certain way near the sanctuary. The boy struck a bell. An elderly man and woman approached the tables. Finally, everyone sat down and began to eat. After a while, the old people stood up again, and the locals, whispering, raised their glasses to them and drank. The old people were put down again, and they were solemnly carried away with their chairs. Soon the procession stopped at the edge of the cliff. At the bottom, Siv opened the Ruby Torah, a sacred written text. Josh was interested in it, but Pelle explained that he would not be able to read it anyway. The woman made cuts in her palms, covered them with runes, and then walked to the edge of the cliff. As is already known, no one here lives to be 73 years old, and the visitors finally found out why. The horrific ritual shocked Danny, and Simon was outraged. How could they all just stand there and watch? But what they did to the grandfather with the hammer was even more shocking. Simon shouted that they were all sick. He and Connie decided to leave and didn't care that it was an ancient custom. Siv explained that the old people had simply reached the end of their life cycle. It is a great joy for them because they give their lives as a gift. Shocked, Danny wanted to be alone and burst into tears. Josh immediately started his dissertation. Christian began to plan to copy the idea and write about this community as well, which angered Josh. But Christian ignored this because he was going to take the same topic anyway. Pelle reassured Josh, saying that the elders would not have allowed the information about the village to be published anyway. Danny packed her things to leave as soon as possible. She asked Pelle why he had brought them to such a horrible place. He replied that he was proud of his community and glad she had come. His parents had died when he was very young, and he had found a new family here. It was at this point that Danny had a dream where her friends packed up and left without her. When she woke up, she discovered that it was just a nightmare. Meanwhile, the red-haired girl had written something on a wooden plate and placed it under Christian's bed. The remains of the old people were burned, and their ashes were poured under an old, dry tree. Josh learned from Pele that they were allowed to write about the village, but were forbidden to mention names and titles. He also found out that a love rune had been placed under Christian's bed to bewitch him. Christian himself also learned that he had become the object of attention because Sister Pele had reached the age of consent. There was a scream. Mark had urinated on the very tree where the remains of the locals' ancestors are kept, and this had caused them to become very angry. Simon and Connie had already packed their bags to leave. They were separated for just a minute, and the elder lied to Connie that her boyfriend had left alone, saying that there was no room for her in the truck. Danny hurried to tell Christian, but he didn't care. He was interested in marriage for procreation. He was told that people from the outside world are usually invited for this purpose. One of the girls confirmed the story about Simon and invited Danny to the kitchen to make pies. Meanwhile, Josh learned more about runes and Ruby Thor. It turned out that they have hundreds of such books, and they are constantly being updated. The latest book is now being filled in by Ruby, although he is just drawing pages with paint, and they are already being deciphered. Josh asked if he could take a picture of the books, but was flatly refused. There was some shouting, but no one paid attention. Everyone was given meat pies, and Danny began to wonder where Connie had gone. One of the local blondes said that Simon had called and asked him to take her to the train station, and then she had left. Mark was worried that he would be killed because of the ancestral tree. Christian found red hair in his pie. In addition, his drink had a reddish tint. One of the girls took Mark to the forest to show him something. Josh, obsessed with his dissertation, left the barracks at night and made his way to a neighboring house to take pictures of the book's pages, despite the ban. At that moment, Mark approached him, but it wasn't him. The stranger was wearing a mask of Mark's face. Josh's skull was crushed with a hammer. This freed up 2 more places in the barracks. During breakfast, the elder said that someone had stolen the last book. They suspected Josh, as well as Danny and Mark, who had disappeared. Christian began to slander Josh, saying that he was the kind of person who could steal a book. Moreover, he said that they were not even friends. The boy was sent to talk to Siv, while Danny prepared for the celebration. Some herbs were added to the water and given to each young girl to drink. It was a special tea for the competition. The girls in the wreaths held hands and formed 4 circles. Danny began to hallucinate. One of the women announced that the dancing was about to begin, and the one who would be the last one to stay on her feet would be crowned for endurance. The musicians started playing, and all the girls started dancing. Siv sat Christian down across from her and asked him how he felt about Maya. Then she added, "You are allowed to date her. According to astrologers, this is a perfect match." When Christian learned that the red-haired girl had plans for him, he went outside. He saw a special dance, during which the participants were falling one by one and being eliminated from the competition. In the end, only 8 girls remained, including Danny. Christian was also given a hallucinogenic tea to drink. Danny was dancing with all her might and had little understanding of what was happening around her. At some point, she spoke Swedish, and the 2 remaining girls fell down. The community chose Danny as the Queen of May. She was surrounded by locals, and she thought her mother had passed by. Danny was lifted onto a throne of leaves and flowers and carried to the festive table, leaving Christian alone in the middle of the clearing. The flowers on the wreath and the leaves on the throne moved and pulsed. Christian could not join the table without an invitation. The Queen of May was brought salted herring, which she had to eat whole. The tea had already affected Christian, and he could not realize what was happening. The women kept telling Danny, "You are part of our family now." The red-haired girl got up from the table and looked at Christian mysteriously. Queen May, meanwhile, was about to get into her carriage and go to bless the cattle and the land. Christian had a different mission. He was taken to a barracks where the elders gave him some smoke to restore his vitality and invited him to a ceremony with Maya. All these actions took place in a circle of women under Ruben's supervision. Danny was brought back, and when she heard strange noises, she decided to check what was happening in the barracks. Her hunch was right. Peeking through a crack, she saw the ritual and felt terrible. She was reassured by the women. Meanwhile, Christian, having completed the ceremony, ran outside and saw Josh's legs sticking out of the garden and went to the barn. There he found Simon's body with a disfigured back that resembled meat wings. Christian had been put to sleep. He woke up on the lawn. He was told that he could not speak or move. The sect was making a sacrifice to the sun. 9 human lives. 4 victims had already been chosen, 2 elders and 2 volunteers. Danny, as Queen of May, had to choose the last victim between a local resident and Christian. The dead bodies were brought to the clearing. Christian was put into a bearskin, cursed and promised that he would go to hell. He was placed with the victims in a shrine, which was set on fire. Hearing the screams of the living, the sect fell into ecstasy. Danny first coughed through the smoke, then stopped and looked at the burning shrine. A smile appeared on her face. She had found her new home. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klonsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.